here with Brandon Slay right prior to the start of the National Wrestling Hall of Fame induction weekend. Brandon, you're one of the 4 distinguished members going in this week. Just your initial thought when you got the phone call where they said, "Hey, Brandon, we'd like you to be part of the Hall of Fame."
Well, I wouldn't say it's a dream come true, because it wasn't something when I was a little kid that I told everybody that I want to go into the Hall of Fame one of these days.
Yeah.
So it wasn't really like a dream come true per se, but I would say that it's a priceless honor. And the men and women have gone into the Hall of Fame before me. Those type of individuals who I know many of them, and I see many of them on a frequent basis. And
Yeah.
the respect I have for them as individuals that I'm going to go in alongside and be part of that group. It's just something I think it's an honor for my community, my family, Texas, Texas wrestling, the University of Pennsylvania, and just all the programs that have poured into me throughout the years.
Now, you're a kid in Texas growing up. How did wrestling end up in your life?
Well, my dad wrestled in high school, and he wrestled in college at the University of Alabama. And when I was 6 years old, he took me to the local YMCA Boys Club in downtown Amarillo, Texas. And I think he just hoped I would like it, and fortunately I did. I had a tough first year. I was 0-20, lost every single match, probably cried almost every single time. But I made some great friendships, and that's what wrestling does. I made some friendships that caused me to want to come back the next year and wrestle. And the next year I had a losing record, 7-15, I think it was. But again, those friendships brought me back the third year, where I had a winning record, and then my 4th year and 5th year and 6th year. And then, as many people know, you continue to put 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years into anything, you'll probably get a little bit better at. So that was the genesis of my wrestling career, was just, my dad taking me down.
Now, Texas, especially your part of the state, big into football. Did they pull you into that too?
Well, I started playing football when I was in 4th grade, and
Right.
I would say really growing up, playing football in Pop Warner football, middle school and high school, there was definitely a big part of me that thought I would play football in college and beyond, because it was something I really loved. And it was something that, as you mentioned, is such a big thing in our community and our culture. And it was more like, hey, that guy's a football player that actually he wrestles too.
Yeah.
Back home it wasn't I'm a wrestler that also plays football. So, part of me thought about going to play football in college. And really what it comes down to, I think, when I kind of got to be like 5'8", 185, and I just kind of quit growing, I thought I could be a good, maybe very good football player, or I thought I could be a great wrestler. And when you're 17 or 18, most of the time, young adults are going to try to choose that great path.
Well, and greatness was something that was part of even your high school experience. I made some world teams for the United States. There weren't a lot of Texans going overseas representing us at that time. What got you to that point where you could compete nationally? You must have had some really good mentorship.
Well, I think, what's interesting is I've heard people say, and I'm not mad at them for saying this, but I've heard people say, man, that Brandon Slay won the Olympics and came out of nowhere. Right? And what they don't really realize is that I know I didn't come out of nowhere, because I started wrestling freestyle when I was 10, 11, 12, 13 years old. And I had a coach named Henry Harmony in Amarillo, Texas, the Maverick Boys Club, who taught us freestyle and Greco in the summer times. He was actually predominantly a Greco guy.
Right.
Who wrestled at Kearney, University of Nebraska at Kearney.
Right.
Side note, Coach Harmony got Travell Delognev involved in wrestling.
Pretty good coach.
So he's coached 2 Olympians, right? But starting freestyle and Greco when I was 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, wrestling in the summer times, that led to me, I say humbly, making 2 cadet world teams in Greco, wrestling, and I got 3rd in the world in Greco, then 2nd in the world in Greco, and then I made the junior world team, and that's where kind of those voices start coming in, like, do you want to wrestle in college?
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, well, you better learn how to shoot a double leg, single leg, and a high crotch. And so then I started transitioning more into freestyle at that period of time, after making the junior world team. And then, we don't have these anymore, but, my freshman year in college, I wrestled in the Espoirs.
Right.
So,
well, it's the juniors really now, 20-year-olds.
Right. So, I made the Espoir world team, and then, won 2 university national titles. So again, I say it, a lot of people are like, man, he came out of nowhere. I'm like, well, I've been part of the USA Wrestling developmental program since I was young. So, it's been a long process. It was a long process to get to the point where you could wrestle in the Olympics.
Now, you may have had a lot of options based on how you were wrestling in high school. University of Pennsylvania, Ivy League school. And you went there at a good time for that school, because it really, the program was clicking. Talk a little bit about that decision and what it was like to be a Quaker.
Well, when I told people that I was choosing to go to the University of Pennsylvania, or if I would say Penn, of course, 90 people people, 90% of the people would say, "Oh, Penn State and Indy Lions, that's
Yeah.
cool." I'm like, no, I'm going to the University of Pennsylvania in West Philadelphia, and I'm going to be a Quaker, not an Indy Lion. People are like, "What?" Right? And so people always wonder why I chose Penn, and I think it's really important to make it clear that, it was an Ivy League school, and I was really focused on my academics. I wanted to major in business as a junior or senior in high school, and they happen to have the #1 business school in the whole entire nation, undergraduate business school, and the Wharton School of Business. So it was Ivy League school at the Wharton School of Business, and then Coach Reyna, Roger Reyna, who's actually, I'm so glad he's here, with us this weekend to celebrate in Stillwater. He did a great job of recruiting me to be a trailblazer. And what I mean by that is Penn hadn't had an All-American in about 40 years. And so he kind of recruited me with more of an entrepreneurial spirit, like, Brandon, you could be part of building something and doing something special here. And it's not like you would just be jumping on the bandwagon of a program that's already had hundreds of national champs and All-Americans. You could be our first in a long time. And I think as a 17-year-old, again, that was really appealing to me. And so that's why I chose to go to Penn, the education, and then wanting to be part of something that was hopefully going to be special one of these days. And, I look back on it, after I became an All-American twice, I think back those years after that, Brett Motter became an NCAA champion, 2000. Matt Valenti won 2 NCAA titles. And then we started having multiple All-Americans every year and actually finished 9th in the nation. So when I was a senior in high school, I think Penn was 90th.
90th to 9th.
90th to 9th.
Yeah, that's
And,
pretty good.
Now that's, I look back on that and I always tell people, besides my faith, choosing to marry my wife and then my kids that came after that, I would say the third best decision that I've ever made was choosing the University of Pennsylvania.
Now, NCAA finalist, right? I mean, didn't quite get to that level you might have wanted, but I mean, that must have obviously encouraged you not only as a wrestler, but to even look higher past the college thing.
Yeah, it did. When you get to the finals of the NCAA tournament and realize you're one of the best wrestlers in the whole entire nation, that did give me some confidence to move forward. But I would say I've always loved freestyle, more than collegiate. Nothing against collegiate, but I've always loved the international styles more. So, not winning the NCAA tournament did not create negativity for me that I couldn't go on.
Yeah.
It actually, like you said, just fueled my confidence. And then what was really interesting when I chose to move out to the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs, Colorado, this coach who came at the exact same period of time was Kevin Jackson. And I remember distinctly talking to him, asking him about his college career, and he was like, "Well, I was second in the NCAAs. I never won the NCAA title. And I became Olympic champion and world champion. So if I can do it, you can do it, right?"
Yeah.
And so he poured that fire into me and got me really believing that I didn't have to be an NCAA champion to be an Olympic champion. So he was just he was a very apropos coach for me to have during those 2 years training for Sydney.
Yeah, so 2000, right? You got two things going on. You go into the Open, what are you, 7th seed? And there's a guy named Joe Williams that you kind of had heard of a little bit and probably had a few battles with in that year, but it ended up being your year. But what was big about that season where you had the opportunity and you took it?
Well, Joe Williams, that term nemesis almost sounds like you don't like the person, you don't have respect for him. So I would just say he was a great challenger for me, great opponent. And I was 0-4 against him, going into the finals of the Nationals that year. He beat me in the NCAA finals. He beat me in the Midland finals. He beat me the year before in the Nationals. And so going into that match, I realized that I had the ability to beat him because last time I lost to him was overtime.
Right.
So it's like I'm right there, and I just need to make a couple tweaks, and I can win this match. And fortunately, I did. I went from a 7th seed to being the national champ. And again, a lot of people look at that and are like, "Well, how did you pull that off?" But they don't realize that pull it off. I mean, I was 7th seed, but I lost to the guy who was 4th in the world in overtime the year before. So again, that's other people thinking that the gap's this big,
Right.
and that was me as an athlete realizing the gap was this big, and I just needed to close that gap. And so, I think back on how I was able to do it. I think a big part of it was just changing my lifestyle a lot. I started making better decisions. I fully connected to my faith. I started really trying to think of other people more than myself. That's always a challenge.
Yep.
But I was just seeking to look to God and others, put them first. And yes, I was focused on my wrestling career. But I think my whole entire just understanding that life isn't all about Olympic gold medal. Life isn't all about winning. It's also about God and other people. And winning is important, But I think I had the attitude going into the Olympics that, yeah, I want to win, of course, duh.
Yeah.
Do I want to win the Olympics? Duh, yeah, I want to win. But I realized it wasn't my end-all, be-all. It wasn't my everything. And so I did it because I had fun wrestling. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the moment. I enjoyed the process. I took it all in. And ultimately, my motto was just to do my best, let God take care of the rest. And I think that really freed my heart, freed my mind to wrestle to my full potential.
Must have been cool to win the Olympic trials in Texas, though, right?
Yeah, it was really cool. I think back on those days, and unfortunately, Reunion Arena, where we were all, you were there too, doesn't exist anymore.
Right. Kind of like the hospital I was born in is the parking lot right now, so I get it.
So I was there not too long ago in Dallas, and somebody asked me, like, where did you make the team? I'm like, well, it was right there. It's not there anymore. But so to be in that tournament in 2000 was the first time they've ever had the Olympic trials in Texas. And I just happened to be wrestling in it that year, and I just happened to be the only Texan in the whole tournament.
Right.
So to have friends and family from Amarillo drive down to Dallas, I think there was about 400 of them, Section 104 up there, I'll never forget it. And just to be able to make the team that night. And I remember when I walked on the mat and they're playing that God Bless Texas song. And, I made the team, and I got my little American flag, and, ran out of there. And there was just definitely a catharsis, a cleansing of the emotions, realizing that this dream that I've been dreaming of since I was 8 years old, watching the Olympics in Los Angeles on TV, just came to fruition. And it was really, it was just, it was a feeling that you can only describe and only understand if you go through it.
Olympics must have some mixed thoughts. I mean, obviously, you went out and beat the best wrestler in the world at the time, Adam Satia. I mean, Adam, right? Buvesa. I knew I was.
Adam would have been a challenge too.
Yeah, Adam.
He won that year, so he would have been a tough game too.
So you got Satia in your pool. And then obviously in the finals, you wrestled Leopold, and that didn't go your way initially, and then it obviously ended up being different. But what are your thoughts about the wrestling part of the Olympics?
I have zero regrets about how I competed in the Olympic Games. I think sometimes athletes look back and think, I wish I would have done this, I wish I would have done that. I look back and I have a lot of peace knowing I gave my full effort. I gave my full effort against Bulgaria, gave my full effort against Russia, gave my full effort against Kazakhstan, gave my full effort against Turkey, and the same thing, gave my full effort in the finals against Germany. And, it's just, I look back on those moments, I remember them crystal clear. Yeah. I mean, I remember, not getting the escape, which I think I should have gotten. I remember, starting the second period in the clinch, which they don't do anymore.
Right, thank God.
Him kind of pump faking me. I moved on the pump fake. They hit me with a caution. They give him 2 points. I go down. He's trying to turn me. I pull his hands away. He yells, ah! They slap my hand. They bring me up. They give me another caution. They give him another point. So I'm down 3-0. And back then in those rules, you had to have 3 points. If you didn't have 3 points, then you went to overtime. Yep. So that third point was for him, who's actually one of the best defensive wrestlers in the world, I think, of all time, one of the best. Him getting these 3 points, like he put his roller skates on after that. And, I did the best I could to try to get a takedown. I really opened it up and kind of threw some Hail Marys to score towards the end. And, he defended that last one I shot and ended up beating me 4-0. But I don't have any regrets in regards to how I competed. But I would say that was a tough moment for me because I came so close to getting the gold that night in front of all my friends and family who came. They said they took a sleigh ride to Sydney. That's what they called it. Yeah. So in front of all those individuals to know that I got so close and I didn't get the gold that night, that was tough. I'm not gonna lie, that was hard for me. But again, I had peace with my effort. Yep. And I remember that night. It took me a few hours. I'm thankful it didn't take long on that, but it took me a few hours to kind of get up in front of everybody. I remember that night distinctly. They gave me a chance to talk, and all of you were around that evening, listening, and it was a little social. And I stood up in front of everybody, and I thanked them for all the support they'd given me. But the last thing I told them, I said, there's more to life than gold medals. Right. And I had a silver around my neck, when I said that.
Well, but you ended up becoming a gold, and obviously people know the story of Leopold testing. And gosh, you're probably the only person I know of that got their gold medal on the Today Show in the middle of Times Square or something, right? Or right in the middle of Manhattan. That had to have been another experience that's just kind of unique and different.
Yeah, I'm probably one of the only people too that had a silver medal that my mom tried to shine it and put some fluid on it. It totally turned the silver medal green, and I had to mail that back in a FedEx envelope to the SOC, so I'm probably the only guy you know that had that happen to him. So thank goodness I actually got another medal.
Right.
And I didn't have
This
the green
one was the
silver
right
medal.
color, right?
Yeah. So, on the Today Show that morning to get the gold medal, and they brought the same award stands over. They brought
Right.
the guy from Korea over to get the silver moon. They brought Barricade over from Turkey to get the bronze. And talk about somebody who was happy, it was the Turk, because he went from fourth, no medal,
Right.
to medal. So that guy had a grin from ear to ear. But to be able to finally sing the Star Spangled Banner in front of America was something I'd always dreamed of. So I got a chance to finally do that. Now, would I've loved to have done that in Sydney? Of course.
Yeah.
But I got to do it in Rockefeller Square. So I still got to do it. I still got to experience that. And then I have the peace knowing that I didn't take nandrolone. I didn't take steroids. I did things right. I know I dotted my I's, crossed my I's, crossed my T's. I did things right. And so I drew, I draw a lot of value from that.
So your background in life gave you opportunities after you stopped competing. You went into business, you did some ministry, things like that. I mean, what was it like when you got away from wrestling a little bit and pursued some of your other goals?
Well, I think it's interesting. It's you're solely focused on winning the gold medal, and you don't really know what you're going to do or feel a month or 2 or 3 months, maybe a year after that. And so I'd always planned on like stopping wrestling if I won the gold and getting into business immediately.
Yeah.
But then you have these opportunities. People say, hey, would you come speak to the second grade class? Just come speak to this school. Just come speak to this youth group. Just come speak to this company. Would you come share your story? And I thought, I'm 24, 25 years old. I'm not married. I don't have any kids. I might as well take advantage of being a positive influence for a while. So I did that for about almost 3 years, kind of traveled around the world and taught and spoke. But then I thought, I'm interested in theology. I moved to Dallas. I got my master's in Dallas Theological Seminary in theology. And then I was about to be 30, so I thought, I need to do what most men do. I should probably get a job. That would be good. Yeah. So I got a job in finance for a commercial real estate company there in Dallas. I did that for about 4 years. But I really started missing wrestling.
And it was coaching that got you back really into it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the opportunity to, you're a national coach at USA Wrestling, and you've coached at the biggest events in the world, like the Olympic Games. You've also helped young men win gold medals at the age group levels, and you've just worked up and down the line with the wrestling community as a coach. What drives you as a coach? Because it's something that you've done quite a bit of time in and done very well at.
My desire to move on from the business world to get back into coaching just had to do with, number one, just missing the sport.
Yeah.
Missing the sport that we love so much and just being around it every day. And then the other thing that really kind of drove me to get back into coaching was to kind of pay it forward, to take all this life that people have poured into me, all these people that I'm going to thank this weekend at the Hall of Fame for what they've done for me, and to take all that, because it was all built up inside, and to be able to share that with other wrestlers. And so I've done that for the last 8 years at USA Wrestling, from being assistant national team coach to our national development coach, to be able to take all that experience and wisdom people had shared with me and pour it into these young men like Kyle Snyder and Mark Hall and guys like that has just been, I would say it's more fulfilling than winning for yourself. It's more fulfilling than winning the gold medal, the Olympic gold medal, to watch a Kyle Snyder win the world medal last year.
Oh, yeah.
To watch Mark Hall, make the junior world team in Dallas, a couple weekends ago, after we spent 5 summers with him. To watch these young men and excel and see the joy on their face, it's actually, it means a lot more to you in your heart and your mind than when you do it yourself. So, to answer your question was really just to pour into other people.
And you're going to have a new opportunity to pour into different people. Talk about the Pennsylvania RTC going back to Philadelphia, and you're going to have to combine both your coaching abilities and what you learned in the business world in this thing. Well, you said it's kind of an entrepreneurial deal, right? Just talk about your next challenge, because everyone knows that in a few months you're going to be building something new.
That's right. So I chose to take the job as the executive director of the Pennsylvania Regional Training Center in Philadelphia, which combines the University of Pennsylvania and Drexel. They're 2 D1 programs. They actually compete against each other in the EIWAs, but they're about a block away. But we're going to kind of join forces, so to speak, because they have 4 coaches. We have 4 coaches. They have about 35 wrestlers. Penn has about 35 wrestlers. So you have 8 coaches, about 70 wrestlers, and then I'm coming in as the 9th coach to focus solely on freestyle. So I've really enjoyed coaching senior level guys. I get to continue to do that. For
Right.
example, I'll get to coach Richard Perry. I'll get to coach BJ Futrell, just committed to us. I'll get to coach senior level guys, but I'll also get to coach developmental guys. I've been coaching developmental guys the last few years at USA Wrestling. All the young men that live within 250 miles of Philly, I'll get a chance to invite some of those top developmental guys to come train with us. I'll get to continue to do that. But then there's also a piece of it, being the executive director, that I'll get to just sharpen my skills in leadership. I'll be making the budget, I'll be fundraising, I'll be accountable to the board of directors of a nonprofit. I'll set those board calls. There'll be a set of tasks, clearly every day, monthly, that I'll have set a goal to fulfill. So it's not just going to be coaching, which is a 40-year-old. It's time for me to continue to grow as a leader. So I'm really excited to do that, and I think whatever I choose to do, 10 years after this, that I think this particular role will be an entrepreneurial role. And when I went to Wharton, my degree was in entrepreneurial management. So I feel like I get to go back to Penn, be near Wharton, and do something that I actually studied to do.
Now, you're not a person that looks backward. I mean, obviously, you don't make new achievements or reach new successes when you do too much of that. But going into the Hall of Fame, it must give you a chance to do a little bit of that and look back over your journey. And just any thoughts that go through your mind now that you're here in Stillwater and going to be honored?
Well, growing up, I used to drive from Amarillo, Texas to Oklahoma, Oklahoma City, and this whole region so many times for little tournaments. So just today I was reminiscing being on I-40 heading east, thinking how many times I did that, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old. So that started cutting that process going. It was very, it was very meaningful to think back on those thoughts. And looking back, it's made me think about the coaches that helped me when I was 6, 7, 8, 9, the coaches that got me into freestyle, Coach Harmony, the coaches I had in middle school, Coach Medlin, coach I had in high school, Johnny Cobb, coach I had at the University of Pennsylvania, Roger Reyna, and then clearly the coach I had out at the Olympic Training Center who worked with me, Kevin Jackson. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention, my last 2 years in high school, I didn't really have anybody to coach me in the summertime because Coach Harmony went down to Dallas. Yeah. So I didn't really have somebody to work with me in Amarillo, and there was a guy named Jim Lord who wrestled at Iowa State. He's from Lisbon, Iowa, same hometown as Royce Alger. I heard plenty of stories about Royce. But Jim Lord asked me my junior and senior in high school to move down to Dallas. I lived with him in his apartment. He took me to the gym. He wrestled with me. He was my main training partner, and he helped prepare me to be a junior national finalist, a 4-time All-American, which is a really big reason why I got recruited. So I think back about all those coaches that poured into me, and it makes you realize that the only reason that one goes into the Hall of Fame is because, a lot of Hall of Fame top individuals, they pour their life into that person. So the only reason I get a chance to go into the Hall of Fame is because people have poured into me.
Well, we look forward to having the ceremonies coming up. You'll get a chance to go into a brand new Hall of Fame. I know you've been in there before, right? I mean,
the old one.
Yeah,
not the new
now
one.
you're going to get the new one, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, a chance to see a lot of friends and family. We look forward to the process, of course, your mind's also now on what's going on in Akron, and getting ready for
that world team trials.
And you're going to have to help get some young athletes ready for this summer. So,
right.
But right now, it's about you and your family and your friends. So, congratulations, Brandon.
Thank you so much, Gary.
Appreciate it.